Jihaad Campbell and Micah Parsons? What about Drew Mukuba's comp? How about Ty Robinson? Fran Duffy has studied the tape. He will tell us all the player comps for the Eagles' 10 draft picks next on the PHLY Eagles Show. Whoever said comparison is the thief of joy will not enjoy today's show, because today is about player comps. It's a fun activity. I'm Zach Berman. This is Fran Duffy. We are here on the PHLY Eagles Show, brought to you by TrueMark Financial Credit Union. And this is something that we always talk about every draft season. It's a conversation that they have in front offices with the coaching staffs. And now we're going to have it here on the PHLY Eagles Show. Fran, good to see you.
Good to see you too. This was an idea you presented, was it last week? And I was like, yeah, let's do that one. This one will be a fun discussion. And I ended up putting a little bit more work into it than I thought I was going to, but I think the final product will be fun.
And so just a little background here, okay? I said coaching staffs, front offices do it. Nick Sirianni literally said he said 2 weeks ago, leading into the draft, that one of the things he really enjoys doing is Howie Roseman will say, who does this player remind you of? And there's a bunch of different ways to go through this. You can look at it from a size perspective.
Yes.
You can look at it, if you just look at the measurables, who does he make you think of? You can look at it from a playing style perspective. You can look at it from a personality perspective, right? These are all things that coaches do, that scouts do. And it's not saying that this player is going to become that player. It's more in your head. All right, if things go completely right, or he has shades of this guy, he has shades of that guy. So this is the fact that we're doing it here is important, because this is what teams do.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head. I think that there are lots of different ways that people will look at doing comparisons, right? And you mentioned the physical dimensions and the athletic testing, those spider charts that get shared every single spring. That's a big part of it. You look into it and say, all right, well, this player is most similar to player B or player C. You go the quality of the player. Hey, you know what? If I'm talking to Eagles fans here on the show, if I'm talking to you, if I'm talking to Bo, and I say, all right, well, this offensive lineman, I think he could be like an Isaac Seumalo level of starter, or he could be a Kenny Gainwell level of backup. That immediately clicks in your head, and you can say that gives you context, right? There's the role and usage. Hey, you know what? I think it could be like an Avonte Maddox type of role in the Eagles defense. And then there's the vibes element too of, you know what, this guy he plays like CJ Gardner-Johnson, right? He's kind of has that feel. Those kinds of context clues can help kind of paint the picture of who a player can be in your mind. Obviously, you don't want to go nuts. You don't want to go, too crazy with saying, oh, every player. There was I think it was David Montgomery?
Yes, I was literally about to say that graphic where everything's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, I mean that to me, you can get a little crazy when you do that, but that's honestly, it's one of my favorite parts of having as much access to data that we have now than compared to 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, where now there is so much, and I keep track of a lot of these data points, whether it's the athletic testing, the physical measurables, but then also usage, where guys line up, the productivity at different spots, and the different metrics that PFF and other services are able to acquire. And so having now that historical context, it just gives you more points to be able to try and draw these kinds of comparisons.
I need to say, when I look at scouting reports, sometimes I'll skim through it and I'll just scroll down to the comp, because in my head it's like, all right, I can see that. And I gave Ben Fennell credit during that dinner when I was just kind of the bystander listening to you guys. Is I love that Ben did exactly the opposite of what you just said, which is he compared it to comparable NFL players. So a 5th round pick wouldn't be Micah Parsons.
Right.
A 5th round pick would be a reserve player who maybe fits a certain role. So I need to say too, I'm going to brag on Fran here. I went through this because I was doing comps, and then Fran sends me what he did in preparation for this and the work he sent Julia. And I was like, all right, Fran's going to have to carry this one here because mine's more like I would never use vibes, but it's like, all right, he plays like this. He has this measurement. You crunched all the film, crunched the numbers. So I'm excited to do that. So without further ado, let's start at the top guy.
Sure.
And we'll start with Jihaad Campbell. And I just want to say I put in the thumbnail Micah Parsons. And I texted Fran this morning as I'm putting as I was sending Julia the information for the thumbnail. And I said, is Micah Parsons realistic? And Fran's like, probably not. And I'm like, well, how about let's just pretend, like, for the sake of conversation, that it is, because it makes for, because the comp Fran gave, and he'll give it in a second, it's a good one, but I don't think that's drawing the YouTube viewers,
definitely
right?
Not.
So my comp is Micah Parsons, and I'll explain to you why in a bit. But first, I want to hear what the expert thinks, and that's what's your comp?
Well, to me, when I'm going through my process, you mentioned the vibes element. A lot of times, I'm watching players on tape in the fall, in the summer, even through the spring before I've crunched all the numbers, and I'm watching a guy, and sometimes it just clicks, and it's like, oh, like he looks like this player, he feels like this player, and then sometimes that holds true through the process. The athletic testing, whatever happens, or you get the full body of work from an analysis standpoint with looking at the production metrics, and it just hits you. To me, when I'm building a comp, when I'm trying to find one through a process like this, it's a version of modeling that teams do when they're going, like your analytics teams are going to go through when you're trying to find, all right, what are some the combination of factors that might result in a positive outcome with a draft pick, right? So let's take a look at some of the markers for Jihaad Campbell that kind of set him apart from others. So right off the bat, he's 6'0", 2'7", so 6'2" and 7/8. So right off the bat, I want to take a look at all linebackers drafted in the last decade. And I want to say, all right, no one shorter than 6'2". And I want to look at his 10-yard split in the 40-yard dash was 1.53. That's elite. So I want to say at least 1.59 in the 10-yard splits. All right, that's an explosive athlete who's taller. I'm going to eliminate anyone that's under 230 pounds. And it also hit at least 119 inches in the broad jump. So I've got all these little data points here. And that's going to spit out a nice sample of players to choose from. So Julia has graphics of players that I spit out from this sample. So this is everyone drafted in the last decade. First and second round picks that had those 4 data points. All right. So no shorter than 6'2", at least 230 pounds, at least 1.59 in the 10-yard split, at least 119 inches in the broad jump. And so that gives you, here are the round 1 and round 2 picks. Micah Parsons is on there, and you start going through and like, all right, like who are the guys? Is there anybody from this list that makes sense? They're like, oh, you know what? I kind of see this player as similar to Jihaad Campbell. And again, I've got a lot of other data that can kind of help to draw these comparisons. But Micah Parsons, like you said, is on there. The name that I ended up getting drawn to, and Julia, there's also the day 3, the day 3 graphic as well. And you could see, honestly, there's only 5 names from the day 3. One that's interesting is Andrew Van Ginkel, a player who excelled under Vic Fangio. But when you're looking at these players, anyone that fits these measurables, there were only 5 of them that went on day 3. The large majority went day 1 and day 2. So that kind of encapsulates the fact that Jihaad Campbell's a special physical specimen. Guys that are built that way, that are that explosive, they go early in the draft. So I think that kind of painted that picture there. But for me, I landed on Quay Walker, former Georgia linebacker who went in the first round of the Green Bay Packers. And
Quay Walker, if that's the outcome for the Eagles with the 31st overall pick, would that be a good outcome?
Well, I mean,
someone who, by the way, his 5th-year option was not picked up.
Exactly right. So yeah, I would say that direct outcome would not be good. Now, obviously, I'm looking at it as what was Quay Walker when he was coming out of Georgia.
Exactly.
And so, all right, well, this is a guy that obviously had the size, had the explosive ability, was still pretty raw to the position. He was still pretty new to the off-ball position, like Jihaad Campbell. When he got to Georgia, a lot of his time was spent on the edge, on the perimeter, and then he eventually moved to the off-ball position. So there's some similarities there. Tail of the tape-wise, basically the same exact length and wingspan, 32.5-inch arms, 80-inch wingspan. Walker was under an inch taller and 6 pounds heavier at the combine. So we're talking like very, very similar physical profile. The testing, they ran the exact same 40 time. Campbell's a little bit more explosive, but otherwise very, very similar across the board from a testing standpoint. Experience level, 21 career starts for Campbell, 17 for Walker. And again, just the same kind of general positives and negatives. Walker had lower lows, I would say. Like when I went back, going back through my notes and I was really high on Quay Walker, his lows were lower and Campbell's highs were higher,
Yep.
if that makes sense. And so that's why I was a little bit higher on him. Tremaine Edmonds was another guy that kind of came to mind. He just missed some of the parameters there, but similar raw test numbers there for Tremaine Edmonds, who obviously was a top 10 pick and got paid a huge money deal from the Chicago Bears in free agency. But those were a couple players that came to mind for me.
Yeah, so I said Micah Parsons, and I was fiddling through my computer because I was trying to find my 2021 notes here.
Okay.
And the reason is for the exact thing you said about Quay Walker is we're not looking at the player now, we're looking at the player coming out.
Yep.
And so with Micah Parsons coming out, a sentiment I had, and I remember that draft vividly. It was the year the Eagles took Devontae Smith, Patrick Surtain, J.C. Horn, were other players we were talking there. And I was having the conversation with Bo and Shio Kapadia, and I was like, Micah Parsons is so much fun to watch. The Eagles aren't going to take an off-ball linebacker at this spot.
Right.
And I said, but you know what? Like, if he's a pass rusher, it changes everything.
Yep.
And he was drafted as an off-ball linebacker. And, interestingly, when I was going and finding when I was looking at thumbnails, I was going back and looking at photos from Parsons' rookie year. And most of them were him playing off ball.
Yeah.
Right. The Micah Parsons we think of now is not the Micah Parsons that the Dallas Cowboys drafted in 2011. Frankly, he would have been a top 5 pick otherwise. And so I think from a size profile, from a playing profile, now Parsons did not play his third year at Penn State. His last year there was 2019. He sat out the COVID year. But he was ferocious as an off-ball linebacker. And if you go back and you read those scouting reports, it was like he's also has the upside to rush the quarterback. Similar type of profile as Jihaad Campbell. Howie Roseman, the fact that he brought up the Penn State, now he didn't mention Parsons by name.
Right.
And when I tried asking Nick Sirianni about that, Howie said that's an unfair question. But you can see in terms of the body type, similarly to Parsons moved to off-ball linebacker at Penn State. For those who remember him when he was a high school player in Harrisburg, he was a pass rusher. He was a pass rusher and he was a running back. Jihaad Campbell was a pass rusher and he was a wide receiver. Now, I'm not saying Jihaad Campbell is going to be Micah Parsons, but it doesn't take a lot of squinting to see that type of athletic ability, to see that type of athletic toughness, to see the explosiveness with which he plays with. And I agree with you that he's going to be an off-ball linebacker to start his career. But what I keep saying is, where is he going to be on third down? On 3rd and 8, is he going to be running toward the quarterback or is he going to go backwards? And I think he'll be running toward the quarterback on 3rd and 8. And that's what Micah Parsons did as a rookie as well.
Yeah, I think the separating factor for me with those two, I mean, like, Micah was such a ridiculous athlete. You're talking somebody who was 10 pounds heavier than Jihaad Campbell at the combine, and he ran 4.36.
True.
At that size, just under 250 pounds to run 4.36. Campbell, impressive. Like, he came in at 235 and he ran low 4.5s, and it's like, man, like, that's really. But 4.36 at 245 is like wild stuff. And so, like, that's, to me, when I'm looking at like the difference from like a pure athleticism standpoint, I can't quite get there with like that comparison. But obviously Campbell is a special physical specimen in his own right.
Yeah. Okay. So Quay Walker, I think, would be solid. Now the Eagles obviously hoping for more from the pass rushing perspective. Let's look now at the next pick, Drew Mukuba. Drew Mukuba, the 2nd round pick. And I have an interesting comp, and I'm curious what your numbers and what your film studies show you.
All right, so Mukuba, again, you try and find what are the outlier like metrics here. What are some of the numbers that kind of set his physical profile apart? Now, he's so light, so I immediately cut out any safety that was over 200 pounds. So he came in at 186 at the combine for testing. Now, it's important to note, shout out to Dane Brugler for the Beast for pointing this out. He came in at 194 at his pro day.
Yeah, so he added
so it looked, he basically just dropped a bunch of weight to run the 40-yard dash at the combine and then put that weight back on. So now, that said, the fact that he ran 4.45, which is pretty good, but 4.45 at 186 is not great. Now 186 pounds. So I basically said, okay, we're gonna, anyone over 200, I'm gonna eliminate. 30.5-inch arms, that's also a very short, compact frame. So no longer than 31.5-inch arms. And then he ran 4.45, like I mentioned. So no slower than 4.55. So that spit out a sample. Julia, if you want to bring up the Drew Mukuba.
Look at this. I love this.
Round 1 through 3 additions here. Here's everybody that got drafted in the last decade that fit these markers. And you see some good players here. Budda Baker, Xavier Woods, Darnell Savage, Marquise Blair. There's varying skill sets here. And what makes it really hard is that some of these guys profiled as, hey, you know what, like this guy could do some things in the slot for you. You know, Budda Baker obviously has played a lot of time in the slot. Quan Martin, Javon Bullard, Jalen Petrie. These guys all played in the slot. While Mukuba did that at Clemson, I don't think that that's going to be a role where he's going to necessarily excel in the NFL. Yes, he can come down and play as an overhang defender, like those kinds of things. He can do some of that in the NFL, but I don't think you're going to be counting on him to come down and cover slot receivers full time. I don't think that he's that kind of lateral athlete. So two of the names from this list that I settled in on, and I struggled because he's kind of unique in this way. Julian Blackmon, right there in the middle there, was a former corner who moved to free safety his final year at Utah. And then Brandon Jones, ironically enough, another guy from Texas. Both guys came out in the 2020 class. Both guys are built very similarly to Drew Mukuba. So Julian Blackmon, 5'11 and 3/4, 187 pounds, same exact wingspan as Mukuba. And Jones, 5'11", 198, slightly shorter arms than the other two. Brandon Jones played for Vic Fangio, ironically enough. That's actually one of the fun things about as we go through these lists. You're going to see a bunch of former Eagles. You're going to see players that played for Eagles coaches on here. So you get a sense of like, oh, they have a type, or you can see maybe what some of the things that they saw throughout the evaluation process. Now, Blackmon did not test at the combine. Jones had impressive speed and range on tape. So it was just a matter of like, all right, you're kind of projecting that moving forward. But Blackmon started a lot of football, just like Mukuba started a lot of games. He had 40 starts. Again, only that last year at safety. Brandon Jones probably had the closer scouting report where it's, hey, you know what? He played a lot of deep safety. He was very aggressive, would run the alley, but he would miss some tackles. The play strength would show up. Going back and rereading my notes on that player, because that's another thing that I'll do as well, is I'll go back and let me pull up my scouting report. What are some of the things I said about this player? And Brandon Jones read very similarly to Drew Mukuba.
I like that. On that list, Darnell Savage was a player I was thinking of, but that's not the player I went with.
Okay.
The player I went with, and you kind of had a natural transition looking at the coaches. This is a guy who Vic Fangio drafted higher than consensus. And the player here, I thought Mukuba was drafted higher than consensus. But I actually wrote this name down when I was watching Mukuba leading into the draft, and I said he'll fit into what Fangio does. Okay, and that's Jimmy Ward. Jimmy Ward is someone who came to mind. Now, Jimmy Ward has that cornerback safety flexibility, but also he didn't come out of Northern Illinois as a big guy. I mean, he was like, what, 5'10", 190? He was a corner, Yeah, and
he got drafted more than a decade ago, so he's not in my sample. So this is interesting. Let me pull up some numbers here. Go ahead.
Yeah, but when Jimmy Ward was playing with Dante Whitner there, this was the profile that I kept thinking about with Mukuba. Now, Ward only played 1 year for Fangio, didn't get that much time, but clearly he's someone that Fangio liked, and flies around the field, aggressive hitter, real active around the ball, and I see a lot of those qualities. The versatility. Mukuba is someone who those first 3 years at Clemson played in the nickel, right? Didn't really play in that all over the field role until last year at Texas. So look, if I'm stretching here, maybe so, but Jimmy Ward was, I think, the 30th overall pick, was a bit of a stretch when he was the 30th overall pick. And that's the name that came to mind for this one.
I'm loving this.
Okay.
Like I said, he's outside of the last 10 years, so he wasn't in my sample that I pulled from. But I'm just looking at some of the comparables here, and I think that this one definitely matches up. And I think when you think of it from, actually, I can do this. Let me pull up I'll pull up my scouting report on Jimmy Ward. All right, so Jimmy Ward came out 2014. Give me 1 second.
So Fangio's final year with the 49ers. And then, he turned into a 10-year pro in the league, right?
Sure.
Multiple contracts, was with Houston most recently. But yeah, I thought about Jimmy Ward during the pre-draft process, so I kind of cheated on this one. This one wasn't done today or yesterday, but this was the name that always came to mind, and was why, frankly, I thought Mukuba made sense in this Fangio scheme.
incredibly athletic safety that can play a number of roles, can play the nickel, is excellent special teamer. Malcolm Jenkins-esque because of his versatility. Interesting, I wrote that about Jimmy Ward. Explosiveness as a hitter, though he will drop his eyes at times, needs to improve his technique as a tackler. Not a thumper, but more of a space player than a box player. A lot of that matches up. This is a good one. I like this one, Zach.
Man, you know what? Well, you can impress Fran.
Let's not go crazy.
Yeah, I hope the next 40 minutes of the show went as well as the past 5. You're gonna have to find out right after these messages. Pabst Light is a new modern beer from the Pabst Brewing Company. If you impress Fran and you want to have a celebratory drink, the way to go is Pabst Light, because you know what? I'm on screen every day. I want to be mindful of what I put in my body. Pabst Light's only 96 calories, 3.5 carbs, and is full of crisp, refreshing flavor. They use high-quality ingredients, so you can get that high-quality beer at a smart, approachable price. It retains the fun and independent spirit that Pabst is known for, but it's light, okay? So that's a great combination. Learn more about the new Pabst Light at PabstLight.com. Please drink responsibly. You must be 21 or older.
We'll now hear from our friends at Ashley because, Zach, it's on. You can shop the Memorial Day sale right now at Ashley. Save $100 off every $1,000 that you spend. Plus, you get amazing savings on outdoor furniture. And that's not all. You get 60 months special financing and have your furniture delivered locally free. Plus, with your qualifying purchase, you get a free gift. You can save on top brand mattresses. You can get free local delivery, setup, and removal, all at Ashley, South Jersey, and Philadelphia. Visit ashleyfurniture.com for more information. Financing with approved credit, minimum purchase required. Some exclusions may apply. See store for details.
I'm trying to take Bo Wolf's lead, and I can't wait for Bo to come back. I'm trying to keep the seat warm for him here. But Bo likes to come out of the breaks either with a super chat or some type of topical question that's not about the show. And so I'm driving in thinking about it, and I'm wondering, are you a Met Gala guy?
No, absolutely not. I could not care less about the Met Gala.
I'm going to need the chat to explain the Met Gala to me. I mean, I know what it is, of course. It perplexes me every year. I saw Ocean's, was it Ocean's 13 or was it Ocean's 13, the one with the female cast? And the thief was at the heist, if you will, was at the Met Gala. But I mean, Saquon was there, Jalen Hurts was there, so all over my feed is Met Gala content. I'm curious, what do you do at the Met Gala after the photo shoot on the walk-in? So everyone dresses up. I get that. But when you're there, is it just a dinner? Is it that's what I'm curious. Is there entertainment? What's going on there? Because my only understanding of the Met Gala is the Ocean's 13 movie, and I'm trying.
Frankly,
to
I'm surprised that
Ocean's 8. Okay,
yeah, I was gonna say Ocean's 13 is the third.
Is the third one? Okay, Ocean's 8. Yeah. I apologize. Ocean's 8, even better. And they stole the necklace off of Anne Hathaway's. Yeah. So.
Did you fall asleep in that movie?
No, I watched it.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, so Ocean's 8. I'm trying now. If Bo is here, I take it Bo probably knows a lot about the Met Gala.
I think he knows as much as we do about the Met Gala.
No, really? Bo's
from. What part of the Met Gala do you think that he's really interested in?
Well, Bo's really into like the cultural zeitgeist. You know, like he knows what's going on. And like what people are talking about, and I
think he would be offended by the idea that you would.
I'm not saying he would want to go to the Met Gala. I'm sure Bo could. If I said to Bo, what happens at the Met Gala, he could tell me what happens at the Met Gala.
I actually don't think he could. You would. I think I see. It's really funny because if I had to pick which of the two of you would know what's going on at the Met, it would be you.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, but Bo's really into the arts. You know, like he loves movies with subtitles, and
this is the part where you all say, "Oh, I think they like drink at the Met Gala." So Bo would like that.
No, but you know what? I'm gonna ask Saquon and Jalen, like what happens inside the Met Gala. But if you're watching right now, well, everyone watching right now, leave it in the chat. Tell me what goes on at the Met Gala. Here you go. It's a fundraiser. Thank you, Claire. It's a fundraiser for the Met Museum. I did know that part. It's hosted by Anna Wintour, I did not know that part. With a theme based on their collection. That part I kind of understood because I read stories this morning about it. Power Jam says it's a party, ZB. Bo would love it. So yeah, I'm curious to find out more about the Met Gala, because the Eagles world has collided now with the Met Gala world.
Cousin Grace said he's about to burst through the doors. Like, no, I 100% agree.
All I've seen of the Met Gala and the TV show Dave, he went, there was an episode where he goes to the Met Gala, but they only show the
walkway. Shout out to
walkway.
Elkins Park, by the way.
Yes, shout out to Elkins Park. But they only show the the walk in. I never know what happens inside the Met Gala. So I'm curious, is there a speaker? Is there, if you've been to the Met Gala, I don't know how you got tickets to the Met Gala, but if you've been to the Met Gala, comment below, or if you know about it, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to sound pretty ignorant when I talk to Saquon and Jalen, and I'm going to say, so tell me what happens at the Met Gala. Anyway, someone who was not at the Met Gala was Ty Robinson.
Shots fired at Ty Robinson.
Yeah. No. Ty Robinson was not at the Met Gala, but when you watch Ty Robinson, you put the numbers in. Who does Ty Robinson remind you of?
All right, well, let's start with the body type. Ty Robinson, 6'5", 288. So kind of a unique body type for a defensive lineman, an interior guy. 32.25-inch arms, so he's got shorter arms for the position. So it's actually pretty easy to kind of come up with a narrow scope of potential comparisons here. So I went with no one under 6'4", no one over 300 pounds, and no one over 34-inch arms. So that created a nice 21-player sample from the last decade. So, Julia, if you want to bring up the day one type of players that we saw here from this sample, this is Ty Robinson, rounds 1 through 3, and there were a handful. So you had 6 options here. Jihaad Ward, Philly guy, out of Illinois. Taven Bryan went in the first round. Nasheem Green, Logan Hall, Zachary Carter, Brian Brzee. So these were the 6 guys that kind of stood out from that standpoint. There were more guys on day 3. So, Julie, if you go to the next one, there were more of these players. And that's where, honestly, when I first started watching Ty Robinson, these were the types of players that popped into my mind. I was like, you know what? I feel like he's your workman-like, kind of do everything, key cog. A lot of these players that turned up in this sample, there weren't a lot of high-level starters. Brian Brzee has been one guy that has turned out that way, but everybody else, it's been more, your third or fourth defensive tackle in the rotation. Now, he has the number 1 RAS, the number 1 relative athletic score compared to all of these players. In the entire sample, he's got the highest athletic testing. I didn't quite see that on film consistently. So, but you're talking Dean Lowry, Logan Lee, Isaiah Loudermilk. These are all guys that stuck in the NFL as backup players. Really, the only starters were Brzee, like I mentioned, and here from this list, Zach Seiler, who stuck with the Miami Dolphins out of Ferris State.
And played well for Fangio.
Yeah, no question. And again, that's another one of those players where you can kind of see that connection there. Now, I think if you were going to count on the athletic upside and you think, all right, hey, he's going to play to this athletic testing, then the only other guy that really kind of tested that way was Brzee. And so I said, and when you look at the numbers, the Brzee comparison kind of matches up. So we're going to look at the tail of the tape here. So purely from a height weight standpoint, Ty Robinson, 6'05", 288 with 32.25-inch arms. Brzee, 6'05", so we're talking a quarter-inch difference, 298 pounds, 32.5-inch arms. So basically the same exact arm length. Testing-wise, Robinson had a better RAS score than Brzee. Robinson had a better 40. Brzee had a better speed score just because he weighed a little bit more and was a little bit more explosive. So the Robinson had better jumps that gave him the better score overall. Brzee was just more productive, much more productive on a per snap basis. Robinson played 6 years, had 47 starts. Brzee was a redshirt sophomore and he came out only 21 starts. So you're looking at the total body of work. Brzee, obviously, it was just a better player. He goes late first round versus Ty Robinson going early on day 3. But I think to me, if you're looking at, if you're buying into the athletic upside, really the only guy from that list that kind of matches that is Brzee. I didn't personally see that. I saw more of the latter form, the guys that more likely ended up in that area. But I think the people that can squint, you said that's what you're hoping for with that body type and that athletic profile.
I mean, that would be an outstanding outcome.
That would be an outstanding outcome.
Yeah. So the player that I have here and Mock Draftable helped with the size comp, but I see it from a playing style perspective too, in terms of the versatility on the line of scrimmage, and that's John Franklin Myers. What do you think of
Interesting.
that?
Yeah, I think I wonder if that he didn't show up in mine because he might have been listed as an edge. So give me
Okay.
1 second. But I think when you're looking at that, yeah, that's the kind of
Because
body
that's what I
type they were
think. Like
hoping for.
he can play at different spots along the line of scrimmage.
Yep.
You know, he's Franco Myers is probably what 6'4", 280 thereabouts. Similar. The mock draft poll came up very comparable, and I see it. It's especially the way he was used with the Jets, right? So that's most my John Franco Myers understanding was his time with the Jets.
Yeah, and I'm looking at why was he eliminated from mine? I'm going to see which part of this he would have gotten eliminated for. Oh, because of the length.
Okay.
No, he's got 32 and 7/8. So there's something here that would have taken him out of the running for me.
He was a 4th round pick from Stephen F. Austin. So 6'4", 288. And he might have been considered an edge, but like the edge, the D-tackle combination, probably better in odd man fronts. So that's what stood out to me. And I think, look, if he's John Franco Myers, that's a terrific outcome for the Eagles. Yeah. John Franco Myers signed a 4-year, $55 million deal. Now he got traded to the Broncos, but my understanding is the Jets really missed him when they traded him.
Yeah, I think that would be an outstanding outcome, certainly for the Eagles if he were to turn out to be that kind of a player.
So the next pick for the Eagles, McWilliams, a Fran Duffy favorite, someone who you were on leading into day 3 of the draft.
Yeah, McWilliams listed 5'10" and a quarter, 30-inch arms. So this is a short, compact frame. So let's whittle this down. So now he's another guy like Mukuba. He was 191 at the combine. He came in over 200 at the pro day. So this is a guy that dropped a lot of weight to try and test as best as he could. Then he went to the pro day and put all that weight back on. So he is I
call that the Jalen Reagor.
Yeah, right. There's all these guys do this now, and it makes it tough to do these, honestly, to do these comparisons, because now that's why I give a little bit of wiggle room when I'm doing the physical comparison, just because there's so much variance with the weights and things of that nature. But over 185 pounds only. So basically I'm like, all right, let me make sure that we're encapsulating everything there. Slower than a 4.5 and you're out, because he ran 4.41 at the combine. And again, kind of going with that 30-inch arm, 5'10" height. Created a 20-player sample. So, Julia, let's pull up. There was actually only a couple guys on day 1 that have been drafted in the last decade that fit this profile. It was Trent McDuffie, and it was Vernon Hargreaves, who was a high pick by the Tampa Bay Bucks. Obviously did not work out. Trent McDuffie obviously has worked out.
Yeah, that'd be an outstanding outcome.
Yes, I think that's very unlikely. There were a few guys on day 3, though, Julia, if we want to go to the day 3 graphic on McWilliams, where there were a few that really resonated with me that I thought that really made a lot of sense. And I compared him to, again, just to kind of encapsulate it for Eagles fans. You think of Avonte Maddox, right? Like he's kind of got that same kind of play style. One player that I thought really matched, there were 3. Diamador Lenoir, who just got a good payday from San Francisco, Trey Brown from Oklahoma, and Amik Robertson with Louisiana Tech. The one that I settled in on, I thought it was very, very similar, was Diamador Lenoir.
Okay.
So McWilliams, 5'10" and a quarter, 191 pounds, 30-inch arms. Lenoir, 5'10" and a quarter, check. 199, basically same exact weight. Almost the same exact arm length. We're talking like a third of an inch difference in arm length. Testing, McWilliams had an 807 RAS. Lenoir's was 7.59, so very, very close there. Same exact 10-yard split, same vert, 0.03 seconds off the 40 time in terms of the difference there between McWilliams and Lenoir. Experience-wise, McWilliams, 36 starts with 2,000 snaps played. Lenoir, 34 starts with 2,500, so basically the same level of experience. McWilliams was a little bit more productive on a per-snap basis, but they basically touched the ball just as often. Both were primarily outside corners and had the toughness and instincts to play in the slot. I love this comp, and obviously this would be an outstanding outcome for the Eagles in the 5th round.
Well done. That is a good one. I think that's better than my comp, which is Cam Sutton.
That would be a great comp. That would be a great outcome as well.
And I was
on the field.
I was that's a good qualifier. Yeah. I was a little late on McWilliams. I watched him more after the draft. I relied on you draft weekend. But in terms of the measurables, in terms of the way he plays, I can see Cam Sutton in him. But I will defer to you, and I think Lenoir I don't even think that's a squinting one. I think that's one. If you just look at the draft range, you look at the career trajectory, that's a solid one for the Eagles, and I like that one. So let's go back to the linebacker and let's go with Smael Mondon Jr.
Yeah, this is another one he was really tricky to do comps for because he's just really light. He was listed 235 by Georgia, got down to 229 for the Senior Bowl, was at 229 for his pro day, but he dropped more weight for the combine. He's down to 224 pounds at the combine. So a lot of the physical comps that I pulled were a lot of like converted safeties moving to linebacker for the first time. So basically what I did, I eliminated anyone that was over 235, which again, that's what he was listed at by Georgia. So anyone over 235, you're out of the sample. He has over an 80-inch wingspan. So anyone that was under 78-inch wing, I got rid of them from the sample. And then he also had a pretty good broad jump. So anyone under 121 inches in the broad, they were thrown out as well. So Julia, let's go to the Smael Mondon day one physical comparisons here. It's actually a decent amount. And one of my the Oren Burks comp that I made back in the fall, that one I was like, oh, he matches up pretty well with Oren Burks. So I felt good about that. But a handful of these other guys, you can see a lot of these guys go relatively early in the draft when you have that size profile, that athletic profile. You see Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah in there. And I mentioned a bunch of former safeties. Divine Diablo out of Virginia Tech. He has stuck in the league for a while. He fits that. Diane Henley from Washington State, now with the LA Chargers. He fits that. DeMarvion Overshown, a very light linebacker who was a safety and a DB in high school. He matched up well here. And then, Julie, if you go to the day three comparisons for Smael Mondon, this is where you see more of these guys show up. So you see Cameron Brown, former Penn State linebacker, Jamian Sherwood, former safety, Tariq Carpenter, former safety, Jalen Carley is last year's sixth-round pick by the Colts, former safety, Jamal Hill for the Panthers, former safety. So the other one I actually kind of liked was Servassier Dennis, who the Tampa Bay Bucks selected. They're counting on him to be a starter this year. I think Dennis is a guy that I think actually compares really well to Smael Mondon. That said, the guy, when I was looking through and again, just on the spreadsheet, just looking at the numbers, DeMarvion Overshown, the comparables with Overshown and Smael Mondon were very, very similar. Now, Overshown was like an elite athlete.
Yes.
Like when you watched him, we were like, holy cow, like this guy's got outstanding range and closing bursts. That's where I was always kind of left wanting with Mondon, where I was like, yeah, like at his size, I wish he was a better wow athlete at that size. But again, just looking at the numbers here, tail the tape, Smael Mondon, 6'2 1/4, 229 at the pro day. Overshown, 6'2 5/8. So we're talking like an eighth of an inch difference, 229 at the pro day. Basically the same exact arm length as Mondon as well. So physically, like dimension-wise, exactly the same. They had the same speed score. So we're talking like weight-adjusted 40-yard dash time. Basically, they both had the same there. Mondon didn't do the shuttles. Overshown had poor shuttles. Mondon had 4 inches better on the broad. No vert for Smael Mondon there. Mondon's RAS was just a little bit more. So like testing-wise, it looked a little bit better for Mondon. But again, Overshown did a full battery of tests. Mondon kind of picked and chose which ones he was going to do. They had the same exact production score. Their experience was relatively the same. Overshown had 33 starts to Mondon's 32. Both guys played the same amount of snaps. And now, again, this is only on the spreadsheet. I would say, like, when I go back and read my scouting report of Overshown, it was very, very different. The sideline to sideline range. That's why, to me, he's more in the Servassier Dennis, Oren Burks category of like, I think this guy can be a third or fourth linebacker. Sure. Like, I kind of feel maybe there's upside there to be a starter, but what I saw on tape was more like high-end backup as opposed to starting quality linebacker.
Yeah, when you said Oren Burks on draft weekend, that registered with me, and I'm like, I can definitely see it. I watched Mondon quite a bit, and just in terms of the height, in terms of the ability to play on special teams, the ability to cover, like things that Oren Burks does, I can see that with Mondon. I also thought it was interesting too. I didn't get a chance to speak to you about it. I spoke to Jamie on yesterday's show. The Eagles,
great show, by the way. I listened to it this morning. Yep.
The Eagles did an awesome job, and I think all the people there with the Eagles Unscripted, terrific access. But I've spoken on this show quite a bit about why I believe in trading back in day 3, because it's more of a cluster of players and it's in the eye of the beholder. More so, I like trading up early and back later because there's just more there's more variations with your board and other teams' boards when you get to that point. And the reason I bring this up is I think it was Lee DiValerio said in that passion meeting that Smael Mondon was his top linebacker going into day 3. Now, I want to preface this by saying that's one scout's opinion. It's not necessarily the team's board.
Right.
But I do know, Smael Mondon was sticking out like a sore thumb on the Eagles board in the 5th round. That's why they took him. They didn't have plans to take another linebacker there. The value was too strong. But if you just look at the amount of linebackers who went on day 3 before Mondon, off ball linebackers, Jack Kaiser, Danny Stutzman, Cody Simon, Barrett Carter, Teddy Buchanan, Shamar James, Jeffrey Bassa, there's you're getting a lot of linebackers before you get a guy who at least one person in your room thought was the top linebacker going into day 3. And that's not abnormal. It's often the case where someone in the 5th round, someone in the 6th round, it's like, how is this guy still here? That very seldom happens in the 2nd round, as the Eagles well saw. So from a strategy perspective, I'm an advocate of what the Eagles did actually 2 years ago, which was they traded up in round 2 to get Cooper DeJean, someone who really stood out, and they traded back multiple times in the 3rd round, in the 4th round, in the 5th round, get volume, and kind of go from there.
Yeah, I think that's obviously like pie in the sky. That would be an ideal outcome on most years, most drafts, and certainly they were able to use that to their advantage last year, and then they were able to play the board a little bit here in 2025.
Fran is going to tell you which offensive linemen have comps that might intrigue you right after this break. It's baseball season right now. That's the big show at night, other than the NBA playoffs and the NHL playoffs. And you know what? When I'm doing work late at night and I have a game on, I'd like to have some action on those games. And so what do? I pull out my phone and I go to Bet365. Okay, at Bet365, I'm one of 90 million users worldwide. They live stream 780,000 events each year. Early payout offers across the NBA and NHL. So the NBA playoffs last night, those were really good games, so you weren't getting any early payouts then. But Bet365 pioneered live in-game betting. Today, Bet365 offers the widest range of games and markets available for live in-game betting across 78 sports. New customers get $150 in bonus bets when you bet $5, win or lose. Sign up, use the code PHLY365, deposit $10, and place a bet for $5 to get that $150 in bonus bets. Again, win or lose. We're supposed to tell you about some bets you like. I'm not going to tell you bet this person, bet that person, but man, Chase Dollander, the rookie pitcher for the Colorado Rockies, he had a little bit of a fingernail issue in that last start. A fingernail issue. I'll get to that in a bit if you want after the break. I'll explain exactly what happened because I was quite interested. But he misses bats. So that's just a little tip. He misses bats. Okay. New customers. Breaking news from Bet365. New customers now get $150 in bonus bets when you bet $5, win or lose. Sign up. Use the code PHLY365. Deposit today and place a bet for $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins or loses. Bonus bets can be used on the spread, totals, players, props, futures, and more. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 or older and physically located in PA. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Those of you that were checking in on our draft show during draft weekend know that Zach told the story about him getting hoodwinked. If you're familiar with that, then you know we're about to hear from our friends at Golden Nugget Jewelers, where for the past 30 years, Golden Nugget Jewelers, they've taken care of Philly. They've operated out of the very same location right in the heart of Center City, Philadelphia. Customers from across Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and even Baltimore and New York City have come to Golden Nugget Jewelers to find that perfect engagement ring or wedding band. Their staff is highly trained and dedicated to providing a personalized shopping experience, a vast selection of engagement rings and wedding bands, along with high-end watches, fashion jewelry, and sparkling diamond necklaces, bracelets, earrings, and a lot more, as Zach has found out in recent days. Receive a final cleaning and written appraisal with every single engagement ring purchase. Golden Nugget Jewelers has been a family-owned and operated business since 1987, right there on Chestnut and 8th in downtown Philadelphia. You deserve an expert and the best price. Golden Nugget Jewelers, where Philly gets engaged. Visit goldennuggetjewelry.com today to learn more.
So what happened was he had a bit of a fingernail issue in previous starts. He went to a nail salon. This is Chase Dollander I'm talking about. He got a fake nail put on. Okay, I didn't even know this was such a thing, a fake nail, but he got a fake
You didn't
nail
know a
put
fake
on.
nail was a thing?
I did not. Did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so you got a fake nail put on. Right.
Yeah.
Like you got a nail put on top. You got like
Yeah, because his nail had his nail had cut or split. His nail had split, and so he got a fake nail put on so he could pitch.
Yep.
But then the fake nail came off as he was pitching.
Okay.
So there was a whole messed up situation. The early reports were a blister, and so I'm following Chase Dollander, and I'm like, oh man, he's got a blister. That's not good. It turned out it was just a fake nail. He got cleared. He's gonna be back on the mound today.
So if you were him,
Yes.
how hard would you be trying to not get out that it's to have fingernail on the injury report?
Oh yeah, I mean that's a tough one there. Well,
what would you do to personally make sure that
Yeah.
that fingernail did not get out of the injury report?
I would probably put my finger under a car and have him drive over it. So it's like, no, the bone's messed up. It's not the nail. But no, he was a pro. He explained it all. I know too much about Chase Dollander's fingernail. But before we get to the offensive lineman, we have a super chat that I just want to get to here. The super chat is, I'm sorry, Joey, my eyes are not. Oh, here we go. Thank you. PNMF, Foster, NFL, NBA, NBL, NHL. This is from My POV Life. Thank you for your contribution. I'm not sure I quite understand this. Peckness Mike. Oh, okay.
I believe he
Gotcha.
meant MLB, not MBL.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
All
Okay.
right.
So
Yep.
here you go.
Okay.
All right. I will go first. Okay.
Okay.
I mean, of course I'm nesting the NFL.
Nesting the NFL is
This is
easy,
my
yeah.
livelihood. It's also it's incredible. Okay. I love covering the NFL. I love everything about the NFL. I'm pecking the NBA. What's fostering in this situation? Because I'm probably like fostering because you're living with it, but not like
Or
forever.
like you have it for a little bit, but
okay,
not forever.
so then I'll go to the NBA. Then I'll go that. So I'm pecking MLB.
So that's
okay,
above
give me
Peck.
a
So
game
Foster's
7.
above Peck.
Yes, I would imagine so.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, so then definitely fostering the NBA. All right. I'm pecking the MLB, and I'm nesting the NHL. Although great job by our whole Flyers crew.
Migrating. You're migrating.
Yeah, I'm sorry, migrating the NHL. Great job by our whole Flyers crew last night. I was watching that with my son. He was so into the lottery results because of the great work that everyone on our PHLY Flyer show was doing.
I think I'm pecking NHL for the NHL playoffs. For me, I love NHL playoffs. Hockey was my first love. The Flyers.
I remember you saying that.
Yeah, those late '90s Flyers teams were my I guess the Phillies, the early '90s Phillies were probably my first team that I was very, very into. But I had all the T-shirts and all that stuff for the Legion of Doom Flyers. So I'm gonna go. I would peck NHL. I guess I'm gonna migrate NBA and I'm gonna foster MLB. I think so.
Okay,
but it's everything. I mean, let's be real. It's NFL and then it's college football and it's a wide gap between everything else.
Yeah, I was on a panel the other night in Bucks County.
Flex.
And they asked me, thank you. I shouted out PHLY multiple times, talked up Fran and Bo. I should have talked up Joey more. I'm sorry. I wouldn't
It's okay.
talk up Joey any day. But they were asking me when I'm not covering a game, what kind of stuff am I watching on TV? And I was like, Sunday night football, Monday night football, Thursday night football, right? Because that's the best programming there is. Football. The more football, the better. Mark Cuban once said that football is going to get too big, and up the pigs and hogs line there. No, there can never be enough football from my perspective.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I will say because of how invested over the last decade, 15 years plus that I've become with football. A lot of the times now when I am watching, I do need to almost unplug from sports at times. And so I do find I've become much more, that's where I've watched a lot of TV now, a lot of the prestige TV. So, I do find myself drifting more towards that in the off season as opposed to that now I'm catching up on shows that maybe I'm watching the final season of Yellowstone that I didn't watch during football season, things like that. So I'm more likely to catch that than watch, Angels versus the Royals on a random Thursday night.
So all the football coaches who are watching this show right now, and they love Fran's work, but then at 2:48, he's talking about watching Prestige TV, and so we need to get them back on the hook here. And nothing will get them more excited than Fran talking about offensive linemen, right? You give offensive line comps, and we're gonna go right into it with Drew Kendall. Drew Kendall, the 5th round pick out of Boston College.
Yeah, so the first of 3 offensive linemen we're going to cover. And again, finding the unique physical characteristics about Drew Kendall. 31 3/4 inch arms. So he's got a squattier frame, shorter frame, even for a center. So no longer than 32 and a half inch arms. Select that, cut all those guys out of the sample. And then he had that short shuttle, which was a really, really strong number. 4.51 in the short shuttle. The short shuttle viewed as like the most important athletic test for an offensive lineman, specifically for an interior offensive lineman. So anyone slower than a 4.6 got cut. This was a really impressive list of players when you look at this group. So, Julia, let's go to the day one players. So this was these are the 4 guys here. So Joe Tooney, Garrett Bradbury, who went in the 1st round. Joe Tooney, obviously, is a great player. Matt Hennessy has been up and down. Creed Humphrey, great player. So pretty good hit rate there with the day 1 and day 2 selections. And then when you get into day 3, there's also a lot of guys that have played a lot of games. So Austin Blythe, started games here in the NFL. Chase Roulier was on his way to a really good career before injuries kind of derailed him. Yelda Froholt has become a starter with the Arizona Cardinals. Drew Dahlman, starting center for the Chicago Bears. Luke Whippler has developed into a starter. Tanner Bortolini, he's in year 2. Dylan McMahon, obviously we know so much about Dylan McMahon. And then Bo Limmer, the Rams starting center as a rookie last year out of Arkansas. So this is, to me, this is the thing that carries the most weight here is the 4.51 short shuttle. And that's why, our friend Josh Norris with Underdog, he has kind of pointed that short shuttle and said, like, yeah, if you could hit this one benchmark, it's almost like a guarantee that you are going to become a starting offensive lineman. No offensive lineman in this class hit the benchmark that Josh had set for that. I'm pretty sure it's 4.48 is the number, but Kendall had the best one at 4.51, so the closest one to hitting that. So when I look at that sample and who are the players that most were most similar to Drew Kendall. The guy I landed on was Yelda Froholt. Coming out of Arkansas a few years back, he was a player actually the Eagles had interest in back then. I remember he was in on a 30 visit that year. Went to the Cleveland Browns, I believe, when he first got drafted, but didn't stick until really he became a starter with the Arizona Cardinals. Drew Petzing got hired away from Cleveland, went down to Arizona, bought Froholt with him. He was a backup, and he became the starting center there. They were built very, very similar, 6'04 and a half. So 6'4 and a half, 306 pounds. Basically the same exact arm length. The testing was near identical from an RAS standpoint, relative athletic score. Kendall was 909. Froholt was 907. Their shuttles were basically identical. Experience, both of them started 37 games. And then even when you look at like pressure rate and pass blocking efficiency and even penalties in their career, it was like exact. So I'm like, yeah, all right, like this is a nice comparison to make. Froholt started as a backup, became a starter down the line with his second team. We'll see if that happens here with Drew Kendall.
I like that one. I'm looking at, very similar profile. Actually, he got drafted by the Patriots, then went to the Texans. Then the Texans and the Browns. I like that. Let's go on then to Myles Hinton.
Wait, do you have one?
No, I was going to defer to you on the offensive lineman.
Okay.
Honestly, I watched them, but I trust your eyes more than me with.
Hold on, I have to take you to to task on something for yesterday's show.
Oh, let's do it. Yeah, I'm responsible for my words.
I mean, the brush that Bo and I got painted with we just stand there and watch practice, and no one can watch practice like us. I feel like I
stand by that actually.
At what point have I ever given off the vibe that no one can watch practice?
It's like look, I say, I mean, people think I'm joking. I'm so sincere with this. Bo is an astute practice observer,
of no question.
And so are you. It shames me to say this as someone who does practice notes, and Jimmy Kemsky might take me to task here, but Fran's practice notes are the best. Like in terms of like what's going on drill to drill. Now, Fran in the past hasn't necessarily been able to give like the full big picture contextualizing things. And have training camp this year. I can't wait for Fran's notes, but like you and Bo, you're not small talking there. It's not like,
oh no,
yeah. So you're watching one-on-ones, and it's not like, let me give you a hypothetical. right? Like, you know, right? So
we save that for the podcast.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the thing. You don't do a podcast when you're watching practice. There are times when I'm trying to watch practice, but someone's coming up to me and they start a conversation, and I can't be like, sorry, I'm watching practice right now. Like,
so you got to get good with the one-word response.
Yeah, to me that's like, yeah, that's rude. So you and Bo, it's very much like, don't bother us. We're watching one-on-one drills. Also, I say this about Bo too. When 7-on-7 is going on over here and the O-line, D-line is going on over there,
It's
Bo
easy.
wouldn't be caught dead watching 7-on-7.
No, get out of here.
Okay, and neither would you. So yeah, so I say this as a compliment. Like, you know, going to, you know, it's not a social excursion going to training camp practice for you. It's your chance to watch football practice.
The way you painted it yesterday, it felt like you were saying like, oh, like we couldn't be bothered. We are in the elite section of the
it's not a matter of elite. It's like the intensity with which you watch a football practice. I apologize if it was misconstrued. I meant it like you aren't messing around when you're watching a football practice.
I'll take it.
And I watch the practices intently. I'm taking notes, but I don't say this as a flex. I say it's just like a lot of different people come up during practice and they're catching up with me. They're talking about different things, and I can't be like, sorry. So invariably, I'm kind of the guy who's like, did you see who caught that pass? You know, because I'm on observations today, and I need to make sure I have each pass documented, right? So that's more what I meant.
When people ask me that question, I'd be like, yeah, I didn't say it.
Yeah.
I want to be an unreliable narrator in that way.
So that's that. You know, I've done practice observations since 2019. I've watched training camp practices since 2012. I watched the previous 2 years with the Giants. I watched 2 years as an Eagles intern, 1 year as an Enquirer, and then 1 year as an Enquirer intern. But so I've watched training camp practices for 20 years. But you watch it with an intensity that is admirable. That I'm to the point. I've always said this, that there's this code among coaches, and not just coaches, football, like people who work in the football building, that the hotter it is, the more clothes you have to wear. The colder it is, the fewer clothes you have to wear.
Yep.
So like coaches will wear shorts and a t-shirt in the winter, but then in training camp, they're in sweatpants and hoodies, right?
It's a good
and
sweat.
so when those coaches walk by you, they'll just grunt with like approval, right? and so the same thing with Bo, right? So they see you watching one-on-ones.
All right, well, let's get into the next player then.
Myles Hinton.
No, we got don't we have Kyle McCord?
Oh yeah, okay, all right, yes.
Because you have a Kyle. You have unless you want to do the offensive line.
I do have, no. Well, I do have Kyle McCord. I'm gonna go first with Kyle McCord.
Yeah, go Kyle McCord.
And tell me what you think here, because I went through a lot of different people with Kyle McCord. I thought at one point Baker Mayfield, but doesn't have quite the arm strength. Kind of has that gunslinger approach.
Pick, yep.
I was thinking Geno Smith at one point. I'm not sure he kind of has the pinpoint that Geno Smith had coming out of West Virginia.
Okay.
I went with Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Okay.
And similar day 3 picks, like gunslinger mentality, really smart out there. You can see it. So yeah, I a lot of experience in college. So I went Fitzpatrick. Is that nuts?
I mean, that would be an outstanding outcome.
No, but in terms of like the player coming out.
Yeah, I think that's. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I didn't do a thorough breakdown of Ryan Fitzpatrick when he came out, just because it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, just looking at stylistically, I think there's some similarities there. This was a very tough one, and quarterback overall is probably the hardest player or the hardest position to do comps for.
It's the one that gets the most comps too.
I know.
Yeah.
It's very, very difficult. My comparison is a little bit different. Like your first name was Baker Mayfield.
No, I just meant in terms of the gunslinger approach.
Yes,
yeah.
I know what you mean. But it's good. So let's go through the names that I pulled here. So there's nothing super crazy about the physical characteristics of Kyle McCord, right? So he listed 6'3", 218, and he didn't test. So we have a limited number of data points that we could pull from. So anybody between 6'2" and 6'4", between 214 and 222 pounds. These were all above average numbers here. No athletic testing. So what I did was I said, all right, who are some players that Like, because I'll pull the amount of explosive runs that a quarterback will have over the course of his career, just showing like how much damage they do with their legs. McCord did not do much. So I did anybody that had fewer than 30 explosive runs. So that turned out this 17-player sample. Julia just gave us the day one options here, and you can see there's a handful of guys. Some of these were high picks. So Jared Goff.
Real quick before you get to the name, because everyone wants to know this, I need to tell our audience you're going to have to tune in to find out in overtime.
Well done.
Thank you.
That's 2 in a row.
Yeah, I got one more show to go before Bo's back.
All right, so those were some of the day one options there, rounds 1 through 3. Julia, if you want to pull up the day 3 options, guys that kind of check the same boxes. The one guy from that first list I thought about was C.J. Beathard when he was coming out of Iowa, but Beathard actually was pretty athletic. I didn't see that same level of movement, so I ended up with some of these players here. I thought about former Eagle Brad Kaya, who's on this list. You remember Brad?
Former Eagle Brad Kaya. That was like a week.
I like that
that
for a couple weeks. I did land on another former Eagle though.
Kyle Lauletta?
I went with Kyle Lauletta.
Okay, selling real estate now, I believe.
Yeah, so Kyle Lauletta, basically the same, very similar size here. So Kyle McCord, 6'3", 218, 9.5-inch hands. Kyle Lauletta, 6'2.5", 222 pounds, 9.5-inch hands. They're testing. Lauletta was a 4.77 athlete, 8.36 RAS, above average athlete. McCord, again, we didn't have a testing profile, but my guess is he would have been somewhere in that range. McCord, 25 starts. The Lauletta's 33. Obviously, McCord started Ohio State, then transferred to Syracuse for that final year. Lauletta spent his time with the Richmond Tigers. Spiders, rather. Sorry. Yeah, I don't know why I said Tigers.
I didn't mean to correct you.
No, you're right.
A great nickname. So
the Sugar Spiders.
That's Joe Douglas's alma mater.
That's right.
And Sean Barber.
That's a good point, too. I don't want to get down a Sean Barber wormhole here. Production-wise, one of the things that was really interesting about Kyle McCord's numbers, dude, he was nails from an accuracy standpoint, under pressure and down the field this past year in that Syracuse offense. They were very aggressive down the field, and when he hit on so many deep balls in that offense, operating from Jeff Nixon this past year, and under pressure, his numbers were outstanding, and his like adjusted completion percentage really, really impressive. The thing is that that's not like when you're looking at those kind of numbers, those typically are pretty volatile. They rise and fall from year to year. So this past year, it was really, really strong for him. So that's why, again, quarterback comparisons, it's very rare for you to see a profile that really matched. But in some of these other areas, like yards per attempt, they were basically the same. Average time to throw from a clean pocket, which is a little bit, again, when you're dealing with clean pockets, that's a little bit more sticky year to year as opposed to under pressure. McCord and Lauletta, very, very similar. Turnover-worthy play rate was the same. Big time to throw rate was very, very similar. Pressure to sack rate was very similar. So a lot of these metrics that have proven to be pretty sticky from college to the NFL and even over college career, like year to year, I thought they were very similar. So this one, I felt, now if you're the Eagles, you're hoping for a more lengthy stay in the NFL than Kyle Lauletta. Lauletta was a 4th-round pick, I believe, for the Giants, right? And then he came to the Eagles, I think, in year 3, 4 of his career, and I think it was his last stop. Local guy as well. Yeah,
Downingtown.
Downingtown. So I think when you're looking at that's where I landed with Kyle Lauletta as opposed to Baker Mayfield.
Okay, yeah. Baker Mayfield, just in terms of the gunslinger approach, Baker has a better arm. All right, so let's. I can give my comps for the O-lineman, but for the sake of time, give me your Myles Hinton and your Cameron Williams. 2 guys who, frankly, are going to be linked together because I think only one's going to make the team.
That's a very good point. So let's go with Myles Hinton here. 6'6" 3/4, 323 pounds. So I went no shorter than 6'6", no lighter than 315. This is a big-bodied kid. RAS of at least 7, which is below average. Now, he's a pretty good athlete. Did not do enough tests over the course of the pre-draft process to qualify for an RAS.
Which is the challenge with RAS.
Yes. And I'm going to be honest, like, I'm not a big fan of RAS personally because I feel like they're a little bit too liberal with what they will give a score out for.
Interesting.
Like Shamar Stewart. Yeah. They gave he's a perfect 10. He didn't do any shuttles. So like we're calling it. Everyone thinks he's this great athlete. He's incredibly stiff. He didn't do the shuttles because he can't turn. And he's a straight line athlete. So if a guy just decides, I'm not going to do this test, or I'm not going to do that test, I'm going to inflate my score. I'm not super crazy about.
I also have a quick RAS take.
Okay.
And I'm not like, I think it's awesome.
Yeah,
I
it's
think,
great to right.
It's great to have. It's a resource I use. I just want to, like, my quick RAS take is there's a school of thought that the Eagles are using RAS testing, or I'm sorry, RAS scores. And I suppose I don't need to say RAS scores because the S is scores there. My take here is that the Eagles have access to all that same data. So
and more data.
Yeah. So they can so they presumably have their own proprietary formula, okay, that is not RAS that's publicly available, but that's based on the information they put in, and it's a predictive model based, they have GPS data. They have a lot, so they can put in more, there's more inputs they can put in to come up with a score that is not standardized online, but standardized in their database that allows them to make decisions that might come out seeming as if they're relying on RAS data, but really they have their own format. Is that a fair assumption to make?
Howie Roseman, Alec Halaby, Alan Walking, like they don't have Kentley Platt sent on push notifications from Twitter, right? Like they're not waiting on every update from RAS. Now, again, for us on the outside, it's a good tool to have.
Exactly.
It's the same way like with the previous, like the Spark scores that that would get put out. Like that's very useful. So being able to have that is good for us on the outside. But yeah, all 32 teams, they have people that have their own athletic models to be able to paint that picture.
Exactly.
So that said, I created a 20-player sample with Myles Hinton. Julia, let's take a look at the first graphic here. These are players that were drafted on day 1, so rounds 1 through 3. With these, and again, this is what makes Myles Hinton so interesting.
That is.
I pulled a 20-player sample. A lot of these players went in the first 3 rounds of the draft. So when you're talking about physical tools, that's why you get so excited about a Myles Hinton. You go through, a lot of these guys went early in the draft. Now, did all these guys hit? Absolutely not. Right? You're looking around and you see some guys that stuck as starters, others that did not. You see some Eagles up there. You see Tyler Steen is on this list, right? There's all different variations in terms of guys that stuck and guys that did not. Julie, if you go to the day 3 version of the graphic as well, you can see that those guys, again, kind of mixed results. A lot of these guys did stick as backups. Some of these guys are a little bit younger, obviously, so we're still waiting. But there were guys that typically, if you have that skill set for Myles Hinton, you're going relatively early in the draft. Now, as I'm going through, I'm like, all right, like who feels the most like Myles Hinton? I ended up with former New York Giants 3rd-round pick Matt Parrott.
That's who I was. Okay, all right. Now I feel more qualified to give my. That's exactly
what do you got. So what was it that drew you to Matt Parrott?
Well, just the size comparison, too, and the college experience as well. At UConn.
Yeah, apparently he played more. That was the one thing is I didn't feel like it was a perfect comp. Parrott played more. He was longer. He had like 36.5-inch arms. Hinton was stronger than Parrott. Like I remember I went back and reread my profile on him this morning. He needed a lot of strength development. Like he just got run through with power. That's not an issue when I'm looking at Hinton. Hinton has got a pretty good anchor act, honestly. A lot of his issues are technical, and it's like, light a fire under him kind of deal. Like, just kind of, get him to physically dominate the guy across from him more often. But physically and then like athletic testing, I thought that this was a pretty good comparison.
I like that.
Let's go to Cameron Williams.
Yes.
All right. So Cameron Williams, unique body type, 6'5 3/4", 317 pounds, 11 3/8-inch hands, gigantic hands, 34.5-inch arms, 84.5-inch wings. So a lot of physical measurables that we can point to as kind of outliers there. Now, the only thing is the weight has fluctuated big time with Cameron Williams. Now, he came in 317 at the combine. That is like as light as he has been in a long, long time. He put on a lot more weight for the pro day even. He was much heavier than that throughout the course of his career. He played heavier than that this past year at Texas. So I went with anybody between 6'5 and 6'7". Anyone over 315 pounds. I was very generous with that number, but 315 pounds, 83.5-inch wingspan. That turned out an 18-player sample. Julia, if we want to go through the day 1 and day 2 selections here, you see Jermaine Ifedi, former Eagle LaRaven Clark. You see a former first-round pick there in Isaiah Wilson. Matt Parrott showed up on this list. Another former Eagle and Tyree Phillips, J.C. Latham, Patrick Paul, and Vince's guy, Kieran Amagaji from Yale from last year, day 2 pick from the Chicago Bears. And then when you get into day 3, which is obviously where Cameron Williams went, you see more of these guys that showed up as well. And I think that the big thing, honestly, looking at this, even from the day 1 options and the day 2 options, there weren't any like plus starters.
Sure.
There weren't a lot of guys that like hit and were big time starters from this group, but a lot of guys that stuck as swing backup types, guys that have lasted in the league as like your fifth offensive or your sixth offensive lineman. You see Matt Pryor on this list. So Olujudo has been a swing tackle for a long time now in the NFL. So you just kind of go through and it's like, all right, a lot of these guys have stuck. They just didn't quite hit like as top end ceilings. The player where I thought though when I looked at it and I was like, you know what, he's a lot of similarities here. Isaiah Wilson.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, Isaiah Wilson, he's not in the NFL anymore due to like off-field, situation there. But I think when you're looking at Wilson, like from a physical standpoint, from a play standpoint, there are a lot of similarities here.
Sure.
Cameron Williams, 6'5" and a quarter. Wilson was under an inch taller, but pretty similar. He was listed 350, which again, Cameron Williams like played closer to 350 than what he came in at the combine. The arm length and the wingspan were very, very similar there. Cameron Williams did not test. Isaiah Wilson had an RAS of 7.27, which is a below average number. I think that Williams would have been somewhere in that area. Like he would have tested well for a bigger guy, but wouldn't have been awe-inspiring there from a movement standpoint. Wilson only had 24 starts. Williams had 16. And then they had some similarities across the board when you're looking at like win rate and things of that nature. But at the end of the day, they were like, holy cow, height, weight, speed, like developmental projects with boom bust potential. Now, Wilson went in the first round, which like seemed crazy at the time, was seen as a big swing. Obviously, it was a swing and a miss, and he was out of the league within 2 years. But I think when you're looking at Williams to take that stab late in the draft, I think that's perfectly fine.
Okay, I like that too. And yeah, Wilson was overdrafted. Mine, understandably ambitious in that this guy was the number 4 overall pick. And there might be scouting a helmet and scouting the last name here. But I went with Mike Williams, the offensive lineman from Texas. Yeah, it was number 4 overall pick.
Wow.
Actually, Jason Peters kind of usurped him as the top offensive lineman there. But similarly, a right tackle at Texas struggled with weight issues. Actually I did a big story on Mike Williams back in 2010 at the Washington Post when he was trying to make it in Washington.
Interesting.
And it was like similar profile coming out. Now, Mike Williams was an All-American who he stayed in college. So probably similar to if Cameron Williams came back next year.
Yeah.
But the early career at Texas, there's some comparison.
He said he was expecting to go day 2.
He said second and third round. That's what he was thinking.
Yeah. I mean,
that's why he came out.
Right. Yeah. It's I'm really I made this point I was very adamant with the quarterbacks, but I'm starting to feel with like basically everybody. Like if there's like any doubt, like just go back, like just go back to school and just make that money that you're going to make at the college level and continue to develop. But yeah, so that's Cameron Williams.
And then finally, Antwuan Powell-Ryland.
Yeah, this is an interesting one, and honestly, it's kind of like the Ty Robinson one, where there are some unique physical characteristics that make doing this comp relatively easy. That said, I didn't love who I landed on, but we'll get to that. 6'0", so just over 6'2.5", 258 pounds, so a thicker frame for a shorter, squattier frame, 31.25 inch arms, very, very short arms. He had an 8.50 RAS score. So I went no taller than 6'3.5", no longer than 32.5 inch arms, must be bigger than 250 pounds. That created a 19-player sample. Let's take a look at the early round picks here for Antwuan Powell-Ryland. There were some guys that were able to certainly make an impact. We see some former Eagles up here on this list. So he's got Yannick Ngakoue, Derek Barnett, Charles Harris, Ryan Anderson, Caleb Von Chasen with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Tuli Tuipulotu is one that just hit with a similar kind of profile.
And big-time sack producer at USC.
Yep,
he led the country in sacks.
Yep, that's a really good point. Byron Young had a huge year, his final year at Tennessee, but only played one season. Chop Robinson last year with Penn State. So those were players that stood out from the first couple days of the draft. Obviously, Ryland goes late in the draft. So let's look at some of the day 3 comps. This is a lot of wide ranges of guys that stuck and guys that didn't. Carl Lawson, anytime there's a pass rusher that's not like a wow athlete, he's got really short arms, it's like, oh, this guy's going to be Carl Lawson. Yeah. So he's like the poster child here. But Alton Robinson, Syracuse, he's on this list. Mike Dana has stuck with the Kansas City Chiefs, and he's kind of an inside-outside player. He was someone that would be a fair comparison if you wanted to point to this body type. I don't think that Ryland is the same kind of interior presence that Dana is, so I struggled with that. I almost went with Bradley Anae. Okay. I went and reread my notes on Bradley Anae. He was a day 3 pick of the Dallas Cowboys back in 2020. Anae had a little bit more power to him than I think what Powell-Ryland does. I almost went with Alton Robinson. Alton Robinson was a little bit more explosive. He was like a pure like speed, like time to snap and get off the ball kind of rusher. I think that when I'm looking at Powell-Ryland, he's a little bit craftier. So then I'm like, all right, like who are just the, like from a characteristic standpoint matched? This guy didn't hit, but it's the third name on this list. That's Jordan Brailford, previously of Oklahoma State. So I'll go through some of the numbers here. Tail of the tape wise, same exact height. We came within about half an inch of arm length, 6 pound difference from a weight standpoint. So very similar body type. Testing wise, Powell-Ryland had an 8.5 RAS. Brailford was 8.49. So basically the same exact testing profile. 40-yard dash, they were 0.03 seconds apart. The 10-yard split, 0.02 seconds apart. The vertical jump, they were half an inch apart. Broad jump, they were 2 inches apart. So testing profile, physical profile, exactly the same. Powell-Ryland started 7 more games and was more productive. Like that's the big thing. And that's what makes Powell-Ryland unique, is that he's got an underwhelming like physical profile. Like you don't love the arm length, but the production speaks for itself. When you looked at Brailford, he had a good final year with Oklahoma State, but didn't really do much before that. He was more like Alton Robinson from a production standpoint, but I got into one of the reasons why I didn't love that comp. So I didn't have like one great comp I felt great about here with Powell-Ryland. But that said, it was an interesting player. And Carl Lawson, like I said, he's kind of like the gold standard of the short arm pass rusher from day 3 that you want to be able to hit. That would obviously be an outstanding outcome here for the Eagles.
Yeah, so mine's an ambitious one. And
shocker.
Yeah, sorry about that.
What do you got?
and
Abdul Carter.
Von Miller. Harold Landry.
Harold Landry, okay.
Harold Landry. Just in terms of the play style, 16 and a half sacks when he was at Boston College his junior year. Testing wise, I mean, not apples for apples, but similar. But like I think now you really need to squint. I'm not saying Powell-Ryland's going to be Harold Landry. Harold Landry is one of the top pass rushers in the NFL. But so I violated the Fennel rule. That's what I'm going to call it. Where like you can't compare.
I'm sure Ben would love that. The Fennel rule.
You can't compare a 6th round pick to a Pro Bowl player. But Harold Landry, just in terms of the pass rush style, is what made me think of.
He only ran 4.65.
Yeah,
I thought he would have tested better than that. Yeah,
and then he had 32 and 7-inch arms.
Yep. So, interesting. Yeah, I think of him as a better athlete than what he tested as. 252 pounds, so he's above the 250 pound threshold. Yeah, I think there's some similarities there.
So when I was the way I did it too. By the way, like in addition to watching the clips of him, I put in the players who had that type of sack production. Mm-hmm. I know there were comps to Muhammad Kamara. Muhammad Kamara was just a much smaller player than Powell-Ryland. So I looked at this at the double digit sacks at the double digit sack seasons in college, and then I put the thresholds in terms of like the height, weight, speed. And that's where Harold Landry popped out.
And it's like, so like conversations like that, like thought process like that, Bo and I on the draft show, the PHLY draft show, this offseason, we did like the analytical outliers and the players that we were worried about. Those are the conversations that teams have all from like January to April, just trying to like predict out like, all right, hey, like let's look at this player, this group of pass rushers. Here are 15 pass rushers that are likely to go on day 3. Who are the ones that are most likely to hit? And you having those kind of discussions and do those kind of projects. That's how teams try and find a target. Like, who are some players that we want to try and get up the board, make sure they're on the board, and give our stamp of approval here as we get closer to the draft.
So as I listened to tonight's show on the ride home from Fran's film review tonight, a few of the notes I'm going to have that I'm lamenting is that I have not mentioned yet the PHLY Liberty Open, which is coming up on June 14th. Shotgun start, okay, which means everyone starts at the same time.
That's right. Yep.
It's at Valley Brook Country Club. Okay, I should have mentioned that earlier. I apologize that I did not. You're too late in the game to go to Fran's film review tonight. It's sold out. Can't wait for that. I see it set up. It's a perk of being a diehard. Fran's the best draft analyst in the business. Eagles fans should appreciate the fact that he does so much work on the Eagles because he does the entire league here at ALLCITY. We have some great events coming up as well, and we should also point out that next week we're going to have more information for you in the coming days, but we're going to have a special show for the NFL schedule release a week from tomorrow, next Wednesday. So that's my wife's second favorite day of the NFL season is the day the schedule is released.
It's the favorite day.
Well, this is the day the season's over. Yeah. So, yeah. So her 3 favorite days are the day the draft's over, the day the season's over, and the schedule release. So make sure you tune in to and make that your first screen, by the way, when the schedule comes out, right?
Yeah, you don't need another screen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're gonna have it's gonna be fun. We have a lot planned for that. Unclair says we want Ospreys. We're gonna have some Ospreys information for you soon. I don't want to speak that. The Ospreys are Bo's baby, and so I'm going to make sure.
Not literally.
Not literally. He's got well done. I would never speak for Bo with the Ospreys, but I promise you, this is not going to be a rush job. This is something that is in the planning stages already. And this has been fun. I always love doing Fran shows. I'm going to miss the one-on-one time with Fran here because Bo's coming back here any day, but not tomorrow, because tomorrow is going to be Rich and I doing in Bo's honor for Bo's final day of paternity. We're going to do a mailbag.
That's
okay.
Right.
It's how else do we honor Bo than with a mailbag? So submit your questions. If you're a diehard member, submit it in the Discord. The Discord questions get priority billing. If you're not a diehard member, please be a diehard member, but you can still participate. Either leave YouTube comments with your question or send it to me on social media at ZBerm. You can send it on Blue Sky as well. But how about this? Leave it in the YouTube comments. I will check out the YouTube comments and we'll get questions that way. But we will take and then we'll take questions live from the chat.
Can I get a question early?
Yes.
Are there any corners on the team? Are there any corners on the team that are younger than Quinyon Mitchell?
This is why you are so good, man. Yes. Turns out Keely Ringo is younger than Quinyon Mitchell.
Good to know.
Also younger than Jahdae Barron, who was drafted in the first round. Something to keep in mind. Man, look, Fran's a utility player. I had a former a good friend, a fellow a colleague of mine for 7 years, who I don't know if he was joking or serious, but when I praised Fran on social media the other day, he wanted some flowers for our time together.
He texted you.
No, he put up that McLean.
Oh, I didn't.
Yeah,
I
put that up. Yeah, yeah. Jeff's the best. He's awesome.
I did not see that.
But no one covers the draft like Fran. So thank you everyone for your time, your interest today. Julia, as always, handling the board. For Fran, for Ocean's 8, for the Met Gala, I'm Zach. Bo would say, as always, we love you.
Fingernails everywhere.
I will say we'll do better tomorrow. Thank you for watching.
We all silly like the mayor.